I think every high school class has a kid that likes fantasy too much, takes it too seriously. In my school, that was Jerome. You could always find him reading some Tolkien knockoff of a novel, and in conversation, he would often speculate about the reality of the book's magic. Magic was what he was really interested in. He seemed to religiously believe it was real and was known to practice spells to see if he could replicate the arts found in the stories. I suppose you could call us friends, or at least he called me his friend, since I was one of the few people who would listen to his theories without making fun of him. I'll confess, I found them interesting, and also I didn't have the heart to put him down. I suppose I should have been worried for him, but he seemed harmless. One day at lunch, he found me in the library's computer lab. "Hey," he said, "I want to show you this website I've been working with for my research." "Research?" I responded, mildly confused. "You know, on magic." Then, without my permission, he took over the computer I was using and entered a URL. It turned out to be an unfinished piece of web fiction. I've never been sure where he found stuff like this, and based on the story's comments, Jerome appeared to be the story's only reader. "Interesting, isn't it?" Jerome asked, his expression begging for a positive answer. "In this one, magic is performed by the dead." I found myself nodding as I listened to his explanation. "You see, we can't perform magic in our mortal form, and the dead are little more than shadows without the power of the living. However, if a mortal performs small sacrifices for a spirit, it can draw on the strength and be asked to perform a favor." I nodded again and said, "You know, I think I read something about ancient cultures using animal sacrifice, not just to appease the gods, but also because the gods needed the sacrifice to receive energy so they could in turn bless the humans that worship them." I didn't, as usual, have the heart to offer a contradictory opinion. "Right," Jerome answered with enthusiasm. "This story correlates so well with ancient cults. There just has to be a connection." I didn't want to point out that the most likely connection was that the author had been inspired by the same myths. "You can't possibly mean to slaughter a goat," I said, and I had to force down a bit of bile as the image formed in my mind. "What? No, the magic in this story doesn't require that kind of sacrifice. It's a bit more personal." Then the bell rang, and I stood up to go to class. "Just read the story," he said. "I really think this is it, the thing I've been missing." I nodded and departed. It was a day or two later, while I was checking Facebook at home after school, when my phone vibrated. "I'm gonna try it. Meet me tonight in the old academy." The text was from Jerome. This particular academy was an old, burnt-out building that stood on the north end of town. It had been part of an old school founded nearly a century ago by a local religious leader, but after being damaged in a fire, it had been abandoned. Despite being a ruin, it had been left standing as a historical site with vague intentions for restoration, though the city had never come up with a clear plan for it. I had been there before, and you could find Jerome there regularly. It was the place kids would sneak into on a dare, a place one could find the remains of occult rituals in the form of chalk pentagrams and the remains of some unlucky animals. I was never sure if the rituals were performed by actual believers or just bored teenagers, but they were enough to cause a stir among the churches whenever they were discovered. This, of course, is what had attracted Jerome. Reading the text again, I sighed and ignored it since I had just come home from my after-school job and I didn't have the fortitude for listening to excuses for why this form of magic failed like all the others. I was his friend, but not that good of one. His text, however, did remind me of the story he'd asked me to read. I had only read the first few paragraphs when he showed it to me at school, but it did seem interesting despite its lack of readership. A page in, and my phone vibrated again. "Hey, I'm here, are you coming?" the text read. I rolled my eyes, then turned my phone off and continued to read. It was maybe a half hour later when the magic system was introduced, and I gasped, hoping Jerome hadn't tried what I just read. I dashed downstairs, snagging the keys to my mom's van, and drove off without an explanation to my parents. I turned my phone back on at a red light and found some missed texts. "I'm going in. I hope you get here soon." I didn't want to try this alone. Throwing my phone into the passenger seat, I sped off towards the Burnout Academy. I threw my car into park and raced to the dilapidated building. Ignoring the no trespassing sign, I found a hole in the fence and snuck through the overgrown weeds that covered the grounds. As I entered the building, I could hear cries of pain echoing off the walls. I started running towards the source of the sound, and that's when I saw him. In a room lit only by a flashlight that was laying on the ground, Jerome was doubled over, sobbing in blood-stained clothes, 3 metal spikes penetrating his forearm. "Jerome!" I screamed out, running over and kneeling down beside him. I started tearing my shirt into makeshift bandages. I can feel them," he said, shivering, grinning despite his obvious agony. "It's so cold when they take the blood, but I can feel them using my strength. They're calling to me. It'll just be a little bit more now." "Let me bandage your arm," I said. "I've got to stop the bleeding." He pulled away. No, he breathed. "I'm so close. I can feel it. They'll have enough now. Soon you'll see." "No," I cried. "I've got to get you to a hospital." He scooted further away from me and drew another spike from a bag that was in his lap. Before I could pull it away, he plunged it into his palm, screaming as blood began to pour out of it, his eyes mad with pain. "Stop!" I said through tears that choked my words. "Please, let me get you out of here." "No." He coughed and fell over as he tried to push himself away. "You never really believed me." His words came between broken breaths. "You were the one friend I thought would stand by me. But you..." His words cut short as he struggled to push the spike further into his hand before he collapsed. His ragged breaths began to slow, and then his body lay still. "You're right. I didn't believe you. I wasn't the friend that you needed. But I never thought you'd do something like this." I sobbed as I attended to his wounds and called an ambulance. It seemed like ages before the paramedics found us in the rubble that was the old academy, and the trip to the hospital felt even longer. Jerome was declared dead upon arrival. The police then questioned me for hours, which seemed like days. When Jerome's parents arrived, I couldn't face them. I just sagged my head forward and wept. They tried to comfort me, but I couldn't let go of the guilt I felt for not answering their son's first text. In the end, Jerome's death was ruled a suicide, but I will spend the rest of my life living with the thought that I'm the one that's responsible. Hello everyone, thank you so much for watching. I'd like to take a moment to touch on a few things before the video ends. First, I'd like to once again thank my first ever patron, K.D. Overoski. Kay, thank you so much, you are truly appreciated. Second, I want to apologize for the audio quality of the voiceover for this video. If you're following me on social media, you'll already know that over the weekend I purchased a much better microphone than the one I'm using now. I was very excited to try it out, but unfortunately, the sound card on my computer is not powerful enough to process that audio, and I wasn't able to use it. But I have ordered an interface that will take care of the issue, and as soon as it arrives, the audio quality of my voiceovers will greatly improve. Third, I'd like to talk about my upload schedule. With the relaunch of my channel, I really do want to have a solid and consistent upload schedule. One video per week minimum, uploaded each Friday. However, as is evidenced by today's video, I also think it would be fun to have 2 videos each week, a creepypasta every Wednesday, and a true experiences every Friday. This, however, though, is entirely up to you, the viewer. If you want to see different content, please let me know. I am 100% open to any and all suggestions, no matter what genre you would like to see. Just let me know. I take everything into consideration. If you want to submit your own stories or experiences, please go ahead and email them to katwolfganghorror@gmail.com. And please remember to include the type of story that you're going to submit. Stalker, online stalker, encounters with a creep, anything paranormal, etc. Put that in the subject line. If you want to become a patron, the links to my Patreon as well as all my social media will be at the end of the video as well as in the description below. Once again, thank you all so much for watching, and if you stick around long enough, you'll never sleep again.